Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be learning about the SpiraTeam release management functionality. When you log into SpiraTeam, you can go to the releases section by going on Planning, Releases, and that brings up the release planning screen. In SpiraTeam, you can organize your project into multiple releases, which are these items you see in blue, which I'm highlighting right now. And those comprise your major and minor versions. Each release will have a version number associated with it, the start date and end date, and some other fields that we'll come to later. Also under your releases, you can also add what are called iterations. These are the milestones within the release. Depending on your methodology, you may call these sprints or iterations or spirals. Inside of SpiraTeam, you can break down your release into these iterations, and that way when you do your planning for your requirements, your tasks, and your tests, you can plan those against specific iterations which will then roll up their results to the parent release. That way you can determine if your testing and development is on track for a particular iteration within your release. And you can see that on this page through the test coverage column and the task progress column. The test coverage column will let you see how many tests have passed or failed in each specific release and in each iteration under a release. And the task progress will show you how many development tasks from the Agile Planning section are on track, behind schedule, running late, or starting late. If you see an item in green, it means it's on schedule. Red means it's running late. Yellow means it's starting late. You can similarly see the same information for the various tasks that come under this release. If we look at another release, release 1.1, you can also see this has iterations 1, 2, and 3, and this one has both tests and tasks. On this page, you can edit the releases in line by choosing the Edit button. You can edit the dates, whether it's an iteration or not, the version number, the name, start date, end date, and some of the other fields as well can be changed. You can also filter this field. So if I want to show only releases that have tests that have at least one failure, or I want to show only the releases that have one task that is the tasks that are starting late or running late, I can do that as well. There I just filtered by all tasks that were running late, and I'm going to filter it back to what I had before, which is everything. You can also export releases to other projects, and there is a shortcut where you can create a test set from a release. So if you have a whole release with a series of tests that are linked and mapped to this release, you can create a test set directly from that. The next thing we're going to do is click inside a release to see the inside. So clicking on this release 1.0, you can see in the left-hand navigation all the releases from that previous view in my tree navigation. I can now click on any of those releases to navigate to them directly in this tree view. On the main part of the screen, I can see the name of the release, the long description, the version number, start date and end date, and I can also set, if I'm using the SpiraTeam for planning, the number of resources and the number of non-working days. The system will use the start and end date, number of resources, and non-working days to calculate the planned effort. The planned effort is the amount of time in that release if all those people work full-time in that date range, and it subtracts the number of non-working days from that time period. So right now we have 216 hours worth of available time, planned time, that we could work with. The system will also then subtract any work that's scheduled and give you the remainder, and that's our available effort. So out of our 216 hours of planned effort, we currently have only 120 hours remaining available for new tasks and new requirements and new defects. If we want to see the items that have been scheduled, we can look at one of the various tabs. First of all, in the Instance tab, you can see any defects that were found in this release, which is the Detected and Release drop-down. You can change that to find any incidents that are fixed in this release, which we call resolved in this release. Right now there are none. You can also look at how many incidents have been verified, i.e. tested in this release. You can also filter this list by any of the standard incident fields, and you can show and hide any of the incident columns that you want to see and that are relevant. I can also see, by going into the requirements and tasks section, which of my requirements or user stories are currently scheduled for this release, or if it's in iteration, for this iteration. I can expand any of the user stories, aka requirements, and show the detailed technical tasks underneath. So, for example, we have this ability to add new books to the system story with 3 technical tasks underneath, and that's been assigned to this release. The system will look at all the individual estimated efforts, actual efforts, and projected efforts, all of the tasks under that requirement, sum them up to the parent requirement, and sum the whole lot up to the release at the top. And in fact, that's how we get this available effort figure, because we have our planned effort, which is the time we have available in the release. We have the estimated time, which is the amount of time we initially estimated when we first put the tasks together. We have the actual effort, which is the amount of time that's been expended, and then we have the projected effort, which, taking the amount of time expended and the time remaining, lets us see what is the current estimate of how much time is remaining. And it is this value which is used to subtract from this planned effort to give us our available effort remaining. Similarly, I can look on the test cases section to see the test cases that are currently planned for this release or iteration. I can hover the mouse over to view any of them in more detail, giving me the name and description. I can also add and remove the tests that are not relevant for this. So perhaps I want to add a new test to my release. I can expand and collapse and just choose the add function. And now I'm going to add that test to this release. I can also log in and provide comments on the release. So perhaps we want to log in and provide feedback. This release needs to be verified against the schedule. That will then submit that comment against that release, and if your email notifications enabled, it will email the appropriate person as well. Releases in SpiraTeam can also be, iterations can be assigned custom fields. For example, we created a custom text field to store some notes, and we created a custom text list field to store the operating system associated with this release. This allows you to filter your releases by different values. So perhaps we want it on the previous screen to find all the releases that are for Windows 2003. We can do that by just filtering on these values. SpiraTeam also lets you view the test results associated with the release. These are all the individual test results that have been recorded against release 1.0. You can see the name of the test that's been run and click on it, the test set that was involved, and the status. SpiraTeam also can connect to a build server. That will let you see all of the builds from an automated build server that have been recorded against this release and whether they passed or failed. For example, if you hook up SpiraTeam to a tool like Jenkins or Hudson, you can have it report back all the development builds against each release, and you can then track your test results and defects and source code revisions against those builds. So that way you can see in one single environment the status of the build and everything that was a part of it and the defects that have come out of it. On the Attachments tab, this is where you can add attachments to the release. Whilst this is less common than attaching documents to a requirement or a test case or a defect, it is definitely possible, and you can use the same functionality elsewhere in the application to add a physical document to my release. Maybe it's a release notes, maybe it's some kind of definition document that's appropriate for the release. You can also attach links. So if you have some release information on a website somewhere that you want to link to, you can just add a URL attachment. It also has a screenshot capture tool, which allows you to capture a screenshot if that would be appropriate as well. And then lastly, we have the History tab. This lets you see all the changes that have been made to the release. You can see every individual change that was made, who made the change, what fields were changed, and if a comment was included, potentially why it was changed. That way, if the dates of a release get changed, if someone moves the release out, if the number of resources gets increased or decreased, you'll be able to go back in time and find out why that change was made and who made that change. And if you have the appropriate permissions, you can actually log into SpiraTeam as an administrator, click on the admin view, and undo the change. And that is the release planning functionality of SpiraTeam. Thank you for listening.